Tuesday, July 16th, 2024, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Well, we're going to look at China today in the context of provocation. And I think that's what I'm starting to see. The West, under the leadership of the Biden administration and specifically Secretary of State Blinken, are provoking China. And I think that's a dangerous game, not just, of course, geopolitically, but financially, economically. And we're going to look at that today. I've seen a couple of stories here that are pointing to that. And I think in the context of Ukraine as well, this is interesting because we're seeing some headlines here that are saying that Trump really, if he wins on November 5th and then is inaugurated on January 20th, 2025, he wants to have a peace process for the Ukraine. So I think the globalists are kind of desperate to keep things going, and they could even expand this kind of proxy war, expand it to China. And we're going to look at that today. Before I do, though, just want to look at some of the headlines, and I'm going to take the FT. Of course, the FT is a massive globalist mouthpiece, and the reason I subscribe to it is because there's the old saying, you need to keep your enemies, your friends close and your enemies even closer. And no, I haven't forgotten about the FT misinformation about gold just over 20 years ago, where they denigrated gold. They said it was finished and that it was pointless to hold bullion, right? And this is when gold was at $2,400 an ounce. So don't listen to the FT, but it's good to look at what they're talking about. So the major headline is Trump's VP pick as a running mate, J.D. Vance. It's interesting that I watched a movie a year or two ago called Hillbilly Elegy, and I didn't realize that it was about J.D. Vance. I had seen J.D. Vance on some clips in the last few months or so because of his stance about the Ukraine. But if you want to learn more about him, I would watch that movie. It's a really good story. He's come from nothing, meteoric rise. And of course, there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, he's a globalist, he's a Bilderberger, he was financed by Peter Thiel. But yeah, watch the movie and make up your own mind. Am I taking sides? No, but I think the FT sees J.D. Vance here, Edward Luce, I think he's one of the editors or the editors of the FT. He says, with Vance, Trump is doubling down on MAGA, or Make America Great Again. The other very interesting story, and we're going to segue this story with the main topic of this video, the provocation of China, is this one here. Trump will demand Russia-Ukraine peace talks if re-elected, claims Orban. And I'm not going to go over or talk about what happened on July 13th and all the theories. But one thing I would say, it's interesting that Orban and Trump met on July 12th. I just wanted to put that out there. So before we link this story with the China story that I'm going to cover today, I want to talk a little bit about protecting your assets, because in an age where sovereign countries that are very powerful and are supposed to maintain friendly relations with each other, when they're confiscating, freezing, assets from other sovereign countries, you need to worry about your own assets. They could come very easily against you, not just in the United States, but here in the UK and Europe. And that's why I've affiliated myself with Dirty Men Safe. It's hidden protection, instant access, and yes, it's a good place to keep some of your gold and silver, or if you are into cryptocurrencies, your hard wallet, or anything else, documents, jewelry, anything that's valuable for you. And yeah, you hide it in plain sight. And if you want to find out more, there's a link below in the description. If you click on it and you decide to get a Dirty Men Safe, you'll get 10% off and a special gift from Dirty Men Safe. So back to China, and back to this headline: Trump will demand Russia-Ukraine peace talks if re-elected, claims Orban. Orban, of course, the Prime Minister of Hungary. He's been on a tour recently, a peace tour. He went to Moscow to meet President Putin. He went to Kiev to meet President Zelensky. He went to Beijing to meet Xi Jinping. And he went to the United States for the 75th anniversary of NATO, the summit there. But he didn't meet like exclusively President Biden or even Blinken. No, he met Trump at Mar-a-Lago to talk about, I think, what he'd been talking about with the other leaders previously. And I think the neocons that run the U.S. government, they're concerned because the neocons, I don't talk too much about this, but their goal is basically to run the world and the project for the new American century, right? And you can't run the world if you don't control Eurasia. And with Russia and China being sovereign and independent, you can't control Eurasia. And that's the whole raison d'etre for this war in the Ukraine, is to bring the Russian government down, bring Putin down, and make Russia a puppet of the West, so that they can't control, so that the neocons can control Eurasia. And unfortunately, the neocons in the US are using the Europeans as a pawn, and we're buying into it. But now that things are heating up, that it looks like Trump wants to end this, they're pushing this narrative now against China. And I saw someone posted this, and this is an article from July 11th, so it's almost a week old, and it's from CNN. It says NATO allies are discussing reclaiming some Chinese-owned infrastructure in Europe. And they point out that China invested massively in Europe after 2008. And we know what happened in 2008. Europe was on its knees. And the euro almost collapsed, of course, 2 or 3 years later with the European sovereign debt crisis. So what they're saying now, and Blinken and the United States are pushing NATO and Western Europe to do, is to get prepared to confiscate or nationalize a lot of the Chinese infrastructure that's been built in Europe. And that's also related to the One Belt, One Road, the new Silk Road. But China also has a lot of infrastructure that it bought, like a lot of ports in Europe. So, and the thing is, the West, of course, wants to have its cake and eat it, because the reason China got involved in Europe in infrastructure and everything else is that Europe was broke and it needed someone, it needed the money. And now it's saying that it might go after Chinese owned infrastructure. And you can bet the Chinese are aware of this, that they've seen this. And it's not going to work either. They tried it. They've tried to bring down the Russian economy with sanctions, freezing their reserves, and it's backfired. If anything, Europe and the United States are shooting themselves in the foot because we're dependent on investment from abroad because we're broke in terms of in the bigger picture in terms of governments. And what this is going to do, it's going to put off the Chinese even more. You know, they're going to stop, probably, they're going to withdraw their capital from Europe. And they're going to go to the global south. You know, Europe anyway, their GDP, I read somewhere, has gone from being 20% of the world's GDP, and it's down to around 14%. So unfortunately, Europe is a sclerotic socialist continent. Unfortunately, the UK is kind of going the same path with the new government. And I'm not saying the old government was any better. So I think we're going to continue to see higher prices, higher cost of living, weaker currencies, higher gold and silver prices. Because of this, the world is dividing itself financially, economically, trade-wise. And the main worry of this is that something kicks off before November and there's an excuse or some huge crisis, right? Because I think the neocons, the globalists, they're desperate now. They try to get rid of the candidate for the presidency, the Republican candidate, through lawfare. That hasn't worked. We saw yesterday there's a judge that ruled that this special counsel that was supposed to look at Trump in relationship to documents, classified documents, it was ruled that it was unconstitutional because the president didn't appoint him and the Senate didn't approve him. So they're losing big time and they're desperate. So I think we're going to continue to see, as I said yesterday, political, economic, social, and geopolitical turbulence. And this Chinese, this Chinese provocation that I'm starting to see is not going to help. And I just found another article that came out actually 8 hours ago in the FT. It says China poses deadly threat to UK, says former NATO boss. Well, NATO is just the military arm, international military arm of the United States at this point. Says, warning from George Robertson, they call him a lord, as he heads British Strategic Defense Review. China is among the countries that pose a deadly threat to Britain, the peer leading the UK Strategic Defense Review has declared. Lord George Robertson, former Secretary General of NATO and ex-Labour Defense Secretary, said that the new review would bring fresh eyes to the threats and challenges facing the UK in the coming years. This is what he said. We're confronted by a deadly quartet of nations increasingly working together, he said in reference to China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. You might have seen this a few months ago or so. I saw it on X or Twitter. I don't watch TV, but there was, I think, a BBC or a Sky person interviewing I think the Chinese ambassador to the UK, and asking him if he thought Britain was a threat, if he was worried about all the stuff. He said, well, we don't really think you're significant. We make more cars than you. We do everything more and better than you.
Can I end with a very straightforward question? There's a big debate in Britain about what language we use about China. Are you a competitor? Are you an ally? Are you a threat? How would you regard your relationship with Britain?
First of all, between China and Britain, from the Chinese perspective, Britain is not a rival, is not a competitor, it is not an enemy, is not an adversary. Britain is just an important country to get along with in peace and in friendship and for mutual benefit. Now, how Britain looks at China, it's up to the British government and people to decide. But I think it will be completely misguided for Britain to view China as an enemy or adversary or a competitor. What do China and Britain compete with? China is the largest manufacturer of automobiles. Competing with Britain? No. China is the largest exporter of EV cars and will lead the whole world in EV production. Is Britain a competitor? No. China will be the biggest and most important producer and R&D in terms of semiconductor in no time. Does that mean that China competes with Britain? No. China will be the leading nation in AI revolution. Is Britain a competitor? No. So I think British government should not overestimate its impact on the global scene and view Britain as a rival of China. China is not. China is a fact. China is a megatrend for Britain to live with and get along with. Let's make peace rather than agitating for war.
So the fact that this guy's coming out and saying that China is a threat to the UK is ridiculous. Why do I think he's doing it? Well, because he's involved in the military-industrial complex. He's going to stand to benefit. You can bet. I haven't looked, but you might want to have a look that he's involved with a lot of the big multinationals that are involved in the defense industry. And if he's warning here that China's a deadly threat, well, it's an excuse for more military spending. And I'm sure a lot of those billions of pounds or hundreds of billions of pounds are a small percentage is going to flow into his pockets. And that's what I think it's all about. Keep an eye on China now. I think that's the next target. And of course, Ukraine, they're going to try to keep it going for as long as possible. And yeah, it's a long time to November 5th, unfortunately, and a lot could happen. So let's quickly look at the markets then. It's 8:15 a.m. London time. We've got spot gold quite near the all-time high of 24.50. I think yesterday we got within $15. Today we're right at 24.35 as I speak here. We're up $13. The bullion banks are going to put up a fight to defend that 24.50 level. So right now, yeah, we're on the highs. 24.35. The low's been 24.20. Silver, yeah, silver's kind of underperforming here because we should really be above 32 because that was the recent high, but we're still below 31, up 14 cents or 0.5%. Yeah, the high's been 30.89 and the low 30.54. Stock market fairly, well, pretty much unchanged. They're down slightly. What else is going on here? Well, the dollar seems to be picking back up a little bit versus the yen. We're at 158.50. We're up 0.25%. The other currencies are unchanged. Crude oil is down 0.75%. WTI crude is at 80.40 and Brent is at 83.70. So before we conclude, just look at the bond market. The 10-year yield this morning is down about 4 basis points, just below 4.20. I saw some people noting on X that the the 2s30s difference in the yield curve had disinverted yesterday by 1 or 2 basis points. And yes, that could be significant. It could mean a sign that a recession is imminent, but I would also keep an eye on the 2s10s. That's still inverted. And what does that mean? Well, it means that the 10-year yields less than the 2-year. And it's still a long way from disinverting. We're about 24 basis points away, but it could change very quickly. And historically, when the curve inverts and then disinverts, you can count on having a recession quite imminently in a matter of months. So we'll keep an eye on that. And yes, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.